She knew my name before I was born. This is a true story. I know you will not believe me. Nobody ever does. But I have proof. I have the photograph. I have the scars. And I have the name that I should never have carried. If you are watching this at 4 in the morning alone in a dark kitchen, turn it off right now. Do not let it know you are listening, because what I am about to tell you did not only happen to me. It can happen to anyone who has ever woken up at 4 in the morning and wondered why. Anyone who has ever felt that strange thirst in the middle of the night that pulls them out of bed and down the stairs. Anyone who has ever had a nickname they cannot remember receiving. And when you finish hearing this story, you will wish you never knew the answer. My name is Sofia Herrera Luna. I am 27 years old. I work as an administrative assistant at a logistics company in Guadalajara, Mexico. I have a younger sister named Valentina. Our parents moved to Monterrey 3 years ago for work and left us the house we grew up in. Everything I just told you is ordinary, normal, the kind of details you forget as soon as you hear them. But there is one detail that is not normal. Since I was a child, everyone has called me Sofi. Not Sophia, not Sophie, Sophie. 4 letters, 2 syllables. A nickname so familiar that I never questioned it, until I discovered that nobody in my family remembers who gave it to me. My mother says I started calling myself Sophie before I could properly speak. She thought I was just mispronouncing my own name. Children do that. They shorten things, they simplify. But I remember differently. I remember learning that name from somewhere. From a television program I watched when I was very small. A program that aired on Friday nights on Channel 4. A program featuring a woman sitting in a room with a pendulum clock telling stories in a whisper. Her name was Sophie. And the room where she sat looked exactly like the living room of my house. I have asked my mother about that program. She does not remember it. I have asked my father. He does not remember it either. I have asked aunts, uncles, old neighbors. Nobody remembers any program like that ever existing on Channel 4 during those years. The thing that nobody tells you about memory is that it can be planted. It can be shaped. It can be given to you by something that should not exist, and you will carry it your whole life thinking it belongs to you. I carried the name Sophie for 25 years, and then I discovered what it really was. I need to tell you about my life before that night. Not because it matters to the story, but because I want you to understand how vulnerable I was, how perfectly positioned to be taken. I was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out from trying to maintain an apartment I could not afford while paying back university loans that seemed to grow no matter how much I paid. My company offered overtime for employees willing to work from home during night hours, handling shipment logistics for international clients in different time zones. I took every shift I could get. 20 pesos extra per hour. It was not much, but it was something. This meant I was awake most nights until 2 or 3 in the morning alone in my room staring at spreadsheets on a laptop screen while the rest of the house slept. That was the first vulnerability. The exhaustion, the isolation of those late hours when the world goes quiet and your mind starts playing tricks. The second vulnerability was emotional. I had ended a 4-year relationship 2 months earlier. His name does not matter. What matters is that I was lonely in a way I had never been before. The kind of loneliness that makes you talk to yourself just to hear a voice. The kind that makes you leave the television on for background noise even when you are not watching. The third vulnerability was geographic. Our parents were 8 hours away by car. My closest friend had moved to Mexico City for work. The neighbors on our street were mostly elderly couples who went to bed at 8 and did not appreciate visitors. If something happened to me in that house, there was no one I could call who would arrive in less than an hour. There is a reason predators choose isolated prey. There is a reason the old stories always begin with someone alone in the woods, or someone staying in an empty house, or someone working the night shift in a building where no one else can hear them scream. I was all of those people at once, and something knew it. Valentina was different from me. 3 years younger, still finishing her graphic design degree at the university. She had the kind of fearlessness that I had always envied. Horror movies did not scare her. She read creepypasta stories for fun. When someone mentioned a haunted location, her first question was always for the address. I used to tease her that she was born without the fear gene. She would tease me back, calling me a rabbit, saying I was afraid of my own shadow. We argued about it constantly, but those were harmless arguments. Sister arguments. The kind where you know nothing real is at stake. I did not understand then why my sister seemed so comfortable in our house at night. Why she never complained about strange sounds or cold spots or the feeling of being watched. I thought it was just her personality. I was wrong. The house was built in the 1970s. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, white walls with that slightly yellowed tint that old paint gets when it has been retouched too many times. Our parents bought it in 1996 when I was 4 years old. They purchased it from the Cervantes family, an elderly couple who said they wanted to retire to their hometown in Oaxaca. What my parents did not know, and what I only discovered years later, was that the Cervantes family was not the original owner. Before them, the house belonged to a woman named Dolores Ramirez Vega. She lived there alone from 1970 until 1975. In the summer of that year, she vanished. The police searched for months. They found no body, no signs of violence, no evidence of robbery or forced entry. Her dinner was still on the table when they broke down the door. The television was still on. Her purse was hanging on its hook by the entrance. Everything suggested she had stepped out for just a moment and would be right back. She never came back. The official conclusion was voluntary disappearance. A woman who simply decided to walk away from her life and start over somewhere else. It happened sometimes. People snapped under pressure and fled. But the neighbors had a different theory. They whispered about strange noises from the house at night, about lights that turned on and off in empty rooms, about a figure they sometimes glimpsed through the kitchen window, tall and thin and standing perfectly still. They whispered about the refrigerator. When the police searched the house, they found something on the refrigerator door, magnetic letters, the kind children use to learn spelling. The letters had been arranged into a single word, Lola, Dolores' nickname. Nobody could explain how the letters got there. Dolores had no children. She lived alone. There was no reason for her to have magnetic letters on her refrigerator and no reason for them to spell her own nickname. The case went cold. The house was sold to the Cervantes family at a steep discount. They lived there for 20 years without incident, or at least without any incident they reported. Then they sold it to my parents. And my parents raised 2 daughters in that house, never knowing what had happened there before them, never knowing what was still waiting in the kitchen. The kitchen was the heart of our home. That is what my mother always said. She spent hours there cooking the dishes of her childhood, filling the house with the smell of pozole and enchiladas and fresh tortillas. My father built the oak cabinets himself, sanding and staining each piece by hand, installing them with the pride of a man who believed he was creating something permanent. The kitchen was at the back corner of the first floor, next to the staircase that led up to the bedrooms. It had a large window overlooking the backyard, a wooden table with 4 chairs, and those beautiful oak cabinets that my father was so proud of. In the corner next to the old gas stove, there was a storage cabinet, narrow, maybe 60 centimeters wide. My mother kept cleaning supplies in there, buckets, bottles of bleach, rags, nothing remarkable, nothing that would make you look twice, except that cabinet was where everything began. The smell of the kitchen changed at night. During the day it smelled like wood and coffee and whatever meal had last been prepared. But after midnight, when the house was dark and the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator, a different smell crept in. Damp, old, like soil that had not seen sunlight in decades, like something buried was trying to breathe. I noticed it during my late work shifts, but always explained it away. Old houses had strange smells. The pipes under the floor probably needed cleaning. The humidity of the rainy season was seeping through cracks in the foundation. Logic is a wonderful tool for ignoring what you do not want to see. The sounds were harder to explain. Sometimes around 4 in the morning I would hear a soft clinking from downstairs, metal against metal, like a spoon tapping against a glass. Like someone stirring coffee in an empty kitchen. I told myself it was the pipes, or the house settling, or Valentina getting water. It was never Valentina. It began on a Thursday night in November. The Day of the Dead celebrations had ended 2 weeks earlier, but the marigold petals were still scattered in doorways throughout the neighborhood, orange and wilted, slowly decomposing into the concrete. In Mexico, we believe the veil between the living and the dead is thinnest during those weeks. We believe the spirits of our ancestors return to visit, to share one more meal with us, to remind us that death is not an ending. We also believe that sometimes things come through that veil that are not our ancestors. That night I finished my work at 11:47. My eyes burned from staring at the laptop screen. My back ached from hunching over the keyboard. I saved my files, closed the computer, and prepared for bed. The house was silent. Valentina had gone to sleep hours earlier. Outside, I could hear the distant rumble of traffic on the main road, but inside there was nothing. That particular kind of nothing that feels heavy, expectant, like the air itself is holding its breath. I walked from my bedroom to the bathroom to brush my teeth. The hallway was dark. I did not turn on the light. I knew this house by memory, every step, every doorway, every creaking floorboard. That was when I felt it. The sensation of being watched, not looked at, watched. There is a difference. When someone looks at you, you feel their attention as a neutral thing, a beam of awareness passing over you. When something watches you, you feel its intention, its hunger, its patience. I stopped in the middle of the hallway. My heart was suddenly pounding, though I did not know why. I turned around slowly, looking back toward the staircase. Nothing there, just darkness. Just the faint outline of the banister and the shadows of the potted plant my mother had left on the landing, and the pendulum clock on the wall, swinging. That clock had been broken for 3 years. My father tried to fix it twice before giving up. The mechanism was dead. The pendulum did not move, but it was moving now, back and forth, counting seconds that should not exist. I stared at it for what felt like minutes. My rational mind was already constructing explanations. A draft from somewhere, a vibration from a passing truck, some mechanical fluke that had temporarily restarted the mechanism. The pendulum stopped. Not gradually, not the way a swing slows down. It stopped instantly in the middle of its arc, as if an invisible hand had reached out and grabbed it. Every hair on my body stood up. I should have run. I should have woken Valentina. I should have called someone, anyone, and gotten out of that house. Instead, I did what humans always do when faced with the impossible. I rationalized. I decided I was tired. I decided I was seeing things. I decided that tomorrow in the daylight everything would make sense. I went to the bathroom. I brushed my teeth. I went to bed. And just before sleep took me, I heard something from downstairs, from the kitchen. A voice, soft, whispering. Not my sister's voice, not any voice I recognized. It said one word, Sofi, not Sophia, not my full name. Sofi, the nickname that nobody remembers giving me, the nickname that something taught me to call myself 23 years ago. I pulled the blanket over my head like a child. I squeezed my eyes shut. I told myself I was dreaming already, dreaming that sleep had come faster than I realized, and this was just the edge of a nightmare. But part of me knew. Even then, before everything that came after, part of me understood that something in my house knew my name. Something that had known it longer than I had been alive. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I did not wake up at 4:30 in the morning. Because something was already awake, something was already watching, and it had decided that the time for hiding was almost over. The time for taking was almost here. The next night, Friday, I woke at 4:32 in the morning. I know the exact time because I reached for my phone before I was fully conscious the way you do when something jolts you from sleep and your first instinct is to check if the world still makes sense. The screen should have shown me the time in bright white numbers against my lock screen photo of the Guadalajara skyline at sunset. Instead, the screen was black. I pressed the power button. Nothing. I held it down for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The phone remained dead. This made no sense. I had plugged it in before bed with 67% battery. The charger was still connected, the little LED on the cable glowing green to indicate power flow. I unplugged it and tried again. This time the screen flickered. For half a second, characters appeared white text against black, like a system error message. But it was not an error message. It was 2 words. Tiempo, 4:32. Time, 4:32. Then the screen went dark again and would not respond to anything I did. My mouth was impossibly dry. That same thirst I had felt so many nights before, the one I always attributed to sleeping with my mouth open or the dry winter air. But this was different. This was a thirst that felt like it had been placed inside me. Like something had reached into my body while I slept and drained the moisture from my tissues. I needed water. I needed it so badly that I was already swinging my legs out of bed before I could think about whether going downstairs was a good idea. The hallway was dark. I reached for the light switch by my door, flipped it up. Nothing happened. I flipped it down and up again. Still nothing. The power was out, or the bulb had died, or something was preventing the light from working in this specific place at this specific time. My phone was dead. The lights were dead. I stood in the darkness of a house I had lived in my entire life and felt like a stranger who had wandered into a place she did not belong. The rational part of my mind was still trying to help. Power outage. The neighborhood had them sometimes, especially during storm season. Except there was no storm. The night was clear and still, and when I looked down the hallway toward the staircase, I could see the faint green glow of the smoke detector on the ceiling. The power was not out. Only the things I needed were not working. I walked slowly toward the stairs. Each step felt like a small act of courage, my bare feet on the tile floor cold enough to make me wince. The darkness pressing against my eyes, forcing them to adjust to find shapes in the absence of light. The refrigerator. I could hear it humming from the kitchen below. That meant electricity was flowing to at least part of the house. The LED light inside would give me enough illumination to find a glass and fill it with water. 12 steps down the staircase. I counted them the way I always did, a habit from childhood, when I used to pretend the stairs were a countdown to something magical. 12, 11, 10, each number bringing me closer to the ground floor, to the kitchen, to whatever was waiting for me there, because something was waiting. I knew it the way you know when someone is staring at the back of your head, the way you know when you are not alone in a room even before you turn around and confirm it. The kitchen doorway gaped before me, a rectangle of shadow slightly darker than the shadows around it. I stepped through. The refrigerator's LED cast a pale blue glow across the room, enough to see the outlines of the table and chairs, enough to see the oak cabinets my father had built, enough to see the magnetic letters on the refrigerator door. They had been moved. The last time I looked at them, they were scattered randomly across the lower half of the door, remnants from when Valentina and I were children learning to spell. Nobody had touched them in years. They were just there, part of the background like the calendar on the wall or the dish towels hanging from the oven handle. Now they were arranged in the center of the door. 2 lines of neat, deliberate letters. Sofi, estoy aquí. Sofi, I am here. I stopped breathing. I am not being dramatic. I literally stopped breathing for what felt like a very long time. My lungs refused to work. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape my body. This was not possible. Valentina was asleep upstairs. I would have heard her come down. The stairs creaked. The floor creaked. Everything in this old house announced movement. And even if she had somehow snuck past me, why would she do this? What kind of joke was this supposed to be? I opened my mouth to call out to her, to scream her name, to demand an explanation. A sound stopped me. Click, soft, metallic, coming from the corner of the kitchen where the storage cabinet stood. The cabinet where my mother kept the cleaning supplies. The cabinet that was too small to contain anything larger than a few buckets and bottles. The cabinet door was open, not all the way, just a crack, maybe 5 centimeters. But it had been closed when I walked in. I was certain of that. I had looked at every corner of this kitchen in those first panic seconds, cataloging everything, making sure I was alone. I was alone, and yet the cabinet had opened. The morning light found me sitting at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I had not touched. I had not gone back to bed. I had not slept. I had sat in that chair for hours, watching the darkness slowly give way to gray, and then to gold, never taking my eyes off the storage cabinet. Nothing else happened. The door did not move again. No more sounds came from the corner. The magnetic letters stayed exactly as they were, spelling out their message of arrival. I heard footsteps on the stairs around 7. Valentina coming down for breakfast. She walked into the kitchen, yawning, her hair tangled from sleep, wearing the oversized university t-shirt she always slept in. She saw me sitting there, saw my face, stopped. Then she looked at the refrigerator. I expected surprise, confusion, fear, any of the reactions a normal person would have upon seeing mysterious words spelled out in magnetic letters on a refrigerator door. What I did not expect was recognition. And something else, something that looked almost like relief. She finally let you see. That is what Valentina said. Not, who did this, or what does it mean, or are you okay? She said she finally let you see, as if this was something she had been waiting for, as if there was a she involved in this, as if my sister knew exactly what was happening in our house and had been keeping it from me. I demanded an explanation. My voice came out strange, cracked from hours of silence and fear. Valentina pulled out a chair and sat across from me. She moved slowly, deliberately, like someone about to deliver news they had been rehearsing for a long time. 2 months, she said. I have known for 2 months and 13 days. The coffee in my hands went cold as she talked. She told me about the first night, about coming downstairs for water, just like I had done countless times, about opening the refrigerator and seeing a shadow in the corner that did not belong to anything in the room. A shape. A silhouette. Something that watched her with an attention that felt physical, like pressure against her skin. She told me about running upstairs, about hiding under her blankets like a child, about convincing herself it was a dream. And then she told me about the morning after, when she came back to the kitchen and found the magnetic letters rearranged. They spelled sorry. I thought it was apologizing, Valentina said, for scaring me. I thought maybe it did not mean to frighten me. Maybe it just wanted to be seen. She started observing after that, not hiding, not ignoring, observing. She kept a notebook documenting every strange occurrence in the house. Objects that moved, doors that opened on their own, sounds that came from empty rooms. She showed me the notebook, page after page of her careful handwriting, dates and times and descriptions. And she showed me the communications. The magnetic letters were not random, they were a language. A slow, patient language between my sister and something that lived in our kitchen. Valentina would ask questions before bed, arranging the letters into words. In the morning, the answers would be waiting for her. "Are you dangerous?" she asked on the 5th night. "No. What do you want?" "To be seen." "Who are you looking for?" "Sofi." Valentina showed me a photograph from her phone, a picture of the refrigerator door taken 3 weeks ago. The letters were arranged into 2 words. Sofi es mie. Sofi is mine. That was when I started to feel the true weight of what my sister was telling me. This was not a haunting in the traditional sense, not a spirit attached to the house or a ghost seeking resolution. This was something that had claimed me, something that had been watching me specifically for reasons I could not understand. I asked Valentina why she had not told me, why she had let me walk through this house for 2 months without knowing what shared it with us. "You would not have believed me," she said. "You would have thought I was crazy or playing a joke, or you would have wanted to call the police or a priest or sell the house, and that would have ruined everything, ruined what I demanded. The relationship," she said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. I spent a long time letting her know I was not afraid, getting her to trust me. If you had come in with your panic and your logic and your need to fix everything, she would have retreated. She would have hidden again, and we would never know what she wants. Her, she. Valentina kept using feminine pronouns for the thing in the cabinet, as if it had a gender, as if it was a person deserving of respect and consideration. I looked at my sister, at her calm face and steady hands, and I realized something terrible. This was not the Valentina I had grown up with. Something had changed in her over these 2 months. Something had been worn away or replaced. The sister who used to argue with me about chores and complain about her professors and steal my makeup without asking had become someone who spoke about an entity in our house the way other people spoke about a new roommate. She had been domesticated, tamed, made comfortable with something that should have terrified her. And whatever had done that to her was now turning its attention to me. The thing about fear is that it cannot sustain itself indefinitely. The human body is not designed for permanent terror. Eventually, the adrenaline runs out. The heart rate slows. The mind begins to adapt, to normalize, to find ways of functioning even in the presence of the impossible. By Saturday night, I had convinced myself that I could handle this, that I could observe as Valentina had done, that I could approach this situation rationally, gather information, and make informed decisions about what to do next. I decided to stay awake, to watch, to see for myself what my sister had been seeing for 2 months. Valentina went to bed at 11, her usual time. I told her I had work to finish, that I would be up late. She did not argue. She just looked at me with an expression I could not read and said good luck. I sat in the living room with all the lights on. The television was playing volume low, some late-night news program I was not really watching. My laptop was open on the coffee table, spreadsheets glowing on the screen. Everything looked normal. Everything felt normal. Midnight came and went. Nothing happened. 1 in the morning. Still nothing. My eyes grew heavy. The combination of 2 sleepless nights and the warmth of the room was pulling me toward unconsciousness. I pinched the skin on the back of my hand to stay awake. I drank glass after glass of water. I stood up and walked around the room every 15 minutes. 2:30. My head kept dropping forward, jerking back up. The news program had switched to infomercials. A woman was enthusiastically demonstrating a blender that could apparently liquefy anything. I heard breathing, not my breathing, not the sound of wind through the windows or the settling of the house. Breathing, slow, heavy, rhythmic, coming from somewhere behind me. I turned my head as slowly as I could manage. The living room was empty. The hallway leading to the kitchen was dark, a tunnel of shadow beyond the reach of the lamps. The breathing continued, closer now, right behind the sofa where I sat. I could feel it, cold air on the back of my neck moving in time with the sound. Something was there. Something was inches away from me, exhaling against my skin. My hand moved toward my phone on the cushion beside me. I needed light. I needed to see what was behind me. I grabbed the phone, fumbled with the screen, opened the flashlight app. The screen displayed a message instead. "No Myers, do not look." The phone was not supposed to be able to display messages like that. It was not a text. It was not a notification. The words were simply there, white text on a black background, as if something had reached into the device and written them directly. I looked anyway. I spun around, holding the phone up, the flashlight finally activating. There was nothing there. But on the floor, exactly where something would have been standing if it had been breathing on my neck, there was dust. Gray, fine dust disturbed into the shape of 2 footprints. Long footprints, too long and too narrow to belong to any person. And leading away from those footprints toward the kitchen, a trail of the same gray dust. A path. An invitation. I should have stayed where I was. I should have woken Valentina. I should have walked out the front door and never come back. Instead, I followed the trail. I do not know why. Fear and curiosity are closely related, two expressions of the same primal need to understand what threatens us. And there was something else, a pull, a compulsion. The same force that made me wake up thirsty every night, that made me walk down to the kitchen in the darkness, that made me call myself by a name someone else had given me. The dust led through the hallway, past the stairs to the kitchen doorway. In the faint light from my phone, I could see it continue across the tile floor, curving around the table, ending at the storage cabinet in the corner. The cabinet door was open. Not a crack this time. Wide open. And inside, where there should have been buckets and bottles and cleaning rags, there was darkness. Absolute darkness, the kind that looked solid, that looked like it could swallow anything that entered it. I raised my phone, pointing the flashlight at the open cabinet. The darkness did not retreat. The light simply stopped at the threshold, as if it had hit a wall, as if the inside of the cabinet existed in a different place where the rules of physics did not apply. I reached out my hand. I do not know what I intended to do. Touch the darkness, prove it was real, prove it was not. My fingers extended toward that impossible threshold. "Sophia, what are you doing?" Valentina's voice sharp with alarm. I spun around. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, her face pale in the glow of my phone. "Do not open it," she said. "It is not time yet." "What is not time?" I demanded. "What is in there? What does it want?" Valentina stepped closer. She took my arm gently but firmly and pulled me away from the cabinet. Her hands were ice cold. "She has been waiting for you since before you were born," my sister said. "Since before our parents bought this house. She chose you. You cannot rush something like that." She, waiting, chose. The words made no sense, and yet they made perfect sense. The name I could not remember learning. The thirst that pulled me out of bed every night. The feeling of being watched that had followed me through every room of this house for as long as I could remember. I let Valentina lead me out of the kitchen. I let her take me upstairs. I let her put me to bed like I was a child, like I was the younger sister. And she was the one who had seen enough of the world to know how to handle it. But I did not sleep. I lay in my bed, listening to the sounds of the house, and at 4:30 in the morning I heard it again, the clinking of metal against glass, a spoon stirring in an empty cup, and under that sound so soft I might have imagined it a voice. Soon, Sophie. Soon. Sunday night. Valentina said she had arranged something. She said the entity had given permission for me to see more. I did not ask how she had communicated this request. I did not want to know what conversations my sister had been having in our kitchen while I slept. We sat in the darkness together, the two of us side by side at the kitchen table. Valentina had lit a single candle, placing it in the center of the table. She said bright light made things difficult. She said we needed to meet halfway. The candle flame danced, though there was no breeze. We waited. 4 in the morning came. Nothing. 4:15. The flame began to flicker more violently. The temperature dropped. I watched my breath turn to mist in the candlelight, white clouds forming with each exhale. 4:27. The cabinet door clicked open. This time I saw it happen. The latch lifted on its own. The door swung outward slowly like a mouth opening to speak. Inside was that same impossible darkness, that solid shadow that light could not penetrate. And then something moved within it. I could not make out details, just a shape. A silhouette darker than the darkness around it. Something tall and thin folded into a space that should not have been able to contain it. Something that was slowly, impossibly unfolding. An arm emerged first, long, too long. Fingers that seemed to have too many joints bending in directions fingers should not bend. The hand gripped the edge of the cabinet door, and I heard wood creak under the pressure. More of it emerged. A shoulder, a torso draped in something that might have been fabric or might have been skin, and then it stopped. It did not fully reveal itself. It stayed there half in and half out of the cabinet, a shadow given partial form. I could feel its attention on me, heavy and ancient and hungry. Its hand moved, reached toward the refrigerator. Those impossible fingers began to rearrange the magnetic letters Hola, Sofi. Hello, Sophie. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But Valentina's hand was on my arm, steady and calm, and her voice was in my ear. "Do not be afraid," she whispered. "She will not hurt you. She just wants you to know she is real." The entity finished spelling its greeting. It paused. Then the hand moved again, selecting new letters. Pronto. Soon. Then it retreated. The shadow folded back into the cabinet, the darkness swallowed what had emerged, and the door swung closed with a soft click. The candle flame steadied. The temperature rose. The kitchen returned to something approaching normal. But I had seen it. I had seen something emerge from a space too small to contain it. Something that moved in ways that violated every law of physics and biology I understood. I had seen the beginning of what waited for me, and I had seen the word it left behind. Soon. After that night, things accelerated. Monday, I woke to find words written in condensation on my bedroom window. Casi es hora, almost time. Tuesday morning, I found one of my childhood photographs on the kitchen table. A picture from 1999, me sitting in front of the television watching something that was not on any channel. On the back in handwriting, I did not recognize someone had written Sophie YYO, Sophie and me. Tuesday night, the entity came to my bedroom. I was not asleep. I had given up on sleep. I was sitting up in bed, my back against the headboard, watching the door, waiting. At 3 a.m, the door opened. Nothing visible entered, but I felt it, a presence, a weight in the air, a cold that seeped through my blankets and into my bones. And then I heard the breathing again, right beside my bed, right next to my face. I could not move, could not scream, could not do anything except lie there as something leaned close to me, so close I could smell it. Earth and copper and something sweet underneath like flowers rotting in stagnant water. A hand touched my cheek. The cold was indescribable, not just temperature, something deeper. Something that reached past my skin and into the core of me, touching parts of myself I did not know existed. I felt something being written into my flesh, a burning sensation that was also freezing, a pain that was almost pleasure, and then a voice not in my ears but directly in my mind. "You have been carrying my name for 25 years, Sophia. Do you know what that means? It means you have been calling me into existence. Every time someone spoke the name Sophie, every time you introduced yourself, every time you wrote it or thought it or dreamed it, you have been feeding me, making me real, and now I am real enough to touch you." The hand withdrew. The presence receded. The door swung closed. I lay there until dawn, unable to move, the cold slowly fading from my body. When I finally got up and looked in the mirror, I saw what it had done. A mark on my cheek, a symbol, a circle with lines radiating outward like a crude sun. The skin around it was red and inflamed, but the symbol itself was white, as if the pigment had been bleached from my flesh. And on my wrist, where I had not noticed anything during the night, there were letters, raised slightly from the surrounding skin like old scars. Sofi. The name it had given me. The name I had been giving back one day at a time for 25 years. I confronted Valentina that morning, showed her the marks, demanded to know what was happening to me. Her response made my blood run cold. "She is almost ready," my sister said. "The cycle is almost complete. She has been building herself out of your name for a quarter century, and now she is strong enough to finish the process." "What process? What does she want?" Valentina looked at me with something like pity in her eyes. "She wants to be you, Sophia. She wants to take everything you are and make it her own. Your memories, your relationships, your body, your life. In a few days, the bond will be complete, and Sofia Herrera Luna will cease to exist. There will only be her wearing your face, living your life, and no one will know the difference." I stared at my sister, at this stranger who wore my sister's face. "And you are okay with this?" You have spent 2 months watching this thing prepare to consume me, and you are okay with it?" Valentina shrugged, a small, casual movement that terrified me more than anything else she had done. She showed me things she said, where she comes from, what exists on the other side. "It is not as terrible as you think, Sophia. It is peaceful, quiet, no more struggling, no more loneliness, no more pain." "You want me to die. I want you to understand," Valentina said. "There is a difference. I left the house that afternoon. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I could not stay in that kitchen with that cabinet with a sister who had decided my consumption was acceptable. I drove for hours thinking, trying to find some way out of the trap that had been closing around me since I was 4 years old. And then I remembered something. An old woman my grandmother used to visit when I was a child. A curandera in Tlaquepaque, who was said to know things about the world that priests and doctors did not understand. Doña Esperanza. If anyone could help me, it would be her. Tlaquepaque was 45 minutes from our house. I arrived as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets of the old town center. Finding Doña Esperanza was harder than I expected. The address I remembered from childhood led to a narrow street lined with shops selling pottery and textiles. I walked up and down the block 3 times before I noticed the door. It was set back from the street, half hidden behind a display of ceramic skulls and wooden crosses. No sign, no indication of what lay beyond. Just a door, painted the same faded blue as the surrounding walls, easy to miss if you were not looking for it. I knocked. The woman who answered was small and ancient, her face a landscape of wrinkles, her hair white and thin and pulled back in a simple bun. She wore a plain black dress and a silver crucifix around her neck. Her eyes were the color of coffee and sharp as broken glass. She looked at me for a long moment. Her gaze moved from my face to my wrist where my sleeve had ridden up to expose the edge of the branded letters, then to my cheek where the symbol was still visible despite my attempts to cover it with makeup. "You are marked," she said. It was not a question. "You carry the writing of Los Sin Nombre." The name hit me like a physical blow. Los Sin Nombre, the nameless ones. I had heard that term before in stories my grandmother used to tell. Stories about creatures that existed in the spaces between worlds, beings that had no identity of their own and hungered for the names of humans. "You know what is happening to me," I said. "I know what has been happening to you since you were 4 years old." She stepped back from the doorway, gesturing for me to enter. "Come inside. We do not have much time." The room beyond the door was small and cluttered. Shelves lined every wall, crowded with bottles and jars and bundles of dried herbs. Candles burned in niches, their flames casting dancing shadows across religious icons and older symbols, things that looked like they predated Christianity by centuries. Doña Esperanza led me to a wooden table in the center of the room. She sat on one side, I sat on the other. Between us was a bowl of water, still and clear. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The waking at 4:30, the thirst, the television program no one remembered. The name I had carried my whole life without knowing where it came from. Valentina's 2 months of secret observation. The entity emerging from the cabinet, the marks on my body, the words that appeared every morning counting down to something I did not understand. Doña Esperanza listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat in silence for a long moment, staring into the bowl of water. Then she began to speak. "Los Sin Nombre are not demons," she said, "not ghosts, not any spirit the church has named or the old religions worshipped. They are older than names, older than language itself. They exist in the spaces between things, between life and death, between what is and what could be, between the word and its meaning." She stood and moved to one of the shelves, selecting a jar filled with something dark and dried. "They have no substance of their own," she continued, "no identity. They are emptiness given awareness, hunger given form. And like all hungry things, they seek to fill themselves." She returned to the table, setting the jar beside the bowl of water. They find humans who are vulnerable, lonely, disconnected from their sense of self, and they offer a trade, a name for a name, an identity for an identity. The human gives the sin nombre a piece of their name, and in return the sin nombre offers companionship, purpose, the feeling of being known, truly known by something that sees every part of you. That is what happened to me, I said, when I was a child. Doña Esperanza nodded. You were 4 years old. You saw something in the reflection of a television screen, and it taught you a name, Sofi. Not your full name, just a piece of it. But a piece is enough. A piece is a doorway. And you have been holding that door open for 25 years. What happens when the door opens completely? The old woman's eyes met mine, and I saw in them a sorrow that seemed ancient. The sin nombre passes through. It takes everything on the other side. Your memories, your relationships, your sense of self, everything that makes you Sofia Herrera Luna. It absorbs all of it, and what remains is a shell. A puppet wearing your face, speaking with your voice, living your life. But it will not be you. It will be the emptiness finally made flesh. I thought of Dolores Ramirez Vega, the woman who had lived in my house 50 years ago, the woman who had vanished one night leaving her dinner on the table and her television still on. It happened before I said, in my house, to a woman named Dolores. Doña Esperanza nodded. She was the one before you, the one who said yes, the one who opened the door willingly. But when a sin nombre takes a host, the process is not permanent. The human identity fades, the emptiness grows. Eventually the host is used up and the sin nombre must find another. That is why it has been cultivating you. That is why it taught you its name when you were too young to understand what you were accepting. It has been preparing you to be its next vessel. Is there a way to stop it? The old woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and began gathering items from around the room. There is a ritual, she said, old, dangerous, from before the Spanish came, when the people of this land understood things about the world that we have forgotten. A ritual of rejection, of reclamation. She placed items on the table as she spoke, a bag of salt, 7 white candles, a small mirror, a bundle of herbs that smelled like sage and something sharper. You must confront the sin nombre directly, she said. Face it without flinching. Look into the void it carries where its face should be. And you must speak the words of rejection. Deny the name you gave it. Deny the bond you created. Reclaim your identity as your own. That sounds simple. It is not. Doña Esperanza's hands stopped moving. Her eyes fixed on mine with terrible intensity. The sin nombre will not release you easily. It has spent 25 years building itself around your name. You are the foundation of its existence. It will fight. It will offer you everything you have ever wanted. It will show you your deepest fears and your most secret desires. It will find every weakness in your soul and exploit it. What if I fail? Then the cycle completes. You become the sin nombre and it becomes you. And your sister, who has been communicating with it, will likely be next. I thought of Valentina, of the strange calm she had shown throughout all of this, of the way she spoke about the entity with something like reverence. She made a deal with it, I said. She promised to help deliver me willingly. Doña Esperanza nodded slowly. That is how they work. They do not rely on a single host. They build networks, relationships. Your sister thinks she is in control, but she is being prepared, cultivated. The moment you are gone, she will be the one carrying the name. Can I save her? Save yourself first. If you break the bond, if you reclaim your name, the sin nombre will be weakened. It may retreat. It may seek another host elsewhere. But as long as you are connected to it, everyone around you is in danger. She pressed the bag of supplies into my hands. Do the ritual tomorrow night, she said. Thursday, begin at midnight. That is when the boundary between worlds is thinnest, when the sin nombre will be at its strongest, but also at its most vulnerable. Why vulnerable? Because to take you, it must fully manifest. It must leave the cabinet and enter our world completely. And while it is here, while it is solid enough to touch you, it is also solid enough to be hurt. She walked me to the door. Before I left, she took my hand. "Remember," she said, "the most important thing is certainty. You cannot reject the name if part of you still wants it. You cannot break the bond if part of you still belongs to it. Search your heart, Sophia. Make sure you know who you are and who you want to be. Because the sin Nombre will find every doubt, every loneliness, every moment when you wished you could be someone else, and it will use all of it against you." I drove home as the stars emerged overhead. My mind was full of what Doña Esperanza had told me of the ritual I would have to perform, of the entity waiting in my kitchen. But underneath the fear, something else was growing. Anger. I had been 4 years old, a child. I had not understood what I was agreeing to when I looked into that television screen and learned a name that was not mine. I had been tricked, manipulated, groomed by something ancient and patient that had waited in my house for decades, feeding on my identity one day at a time. 25 years, my entire life. Every moment I had introduced myself as Sofi. Every time someone had called me by that name. Every birthday card, every school paper, every signature. All of it had been food for something from the void. And my sister had known for 2 months, had watched me stumble through my life unaware of the danger, had made deals with the thing that wanted to consume me. The anger was good. The anger was fuel. I would need it for what came next. Thursday, the day of the ritual. I spent the morning preparing. I found the photograph from 1999 in the box of old pictures my mother had left behind. The one with me sitting in front of the television watching something that was not there. The one with the shadow in the corner that I now knew was not a shadow at all. On the back in my own childish handwriting was the word Sofi, and next to it a drawing of a figure. Tall, thin, with a smile that stretched too wide. I had drawn this when I was 4 years old. I had drawn the thing that had been teaching me its name. I memorized the words Doña Esperanza had taught me. Repeated them until they flowed without hesitation. Drew the circle of salt in the kitchen. Placed the 7 candles around the perimeter. I hid what I was doing from Valentina as best I could. She came home from class in the afternoon, looked at me with those strange, calm eyes, and asked if I had made my decision. I told her I was still thinking. She nodded and went to her room. I heard her moving around up there, heard the soft murmur of her voice as if she was talking to someone, warning it, preparing it. It did not matter. The ritual would work or it would not. Either way, I was done being afraid. At 11:30, I went downstairs to the kitchen. Valentina was already there. She was sitting at the table in the dark, watching the storage cabinet. "You are going to try to fight her," she said without turning around. "Yes, it will not work. You have too many doubts, too much loneliness she can use." I walked past her and stepped into the circle of salt. "Sat down cross-legged in the center, maybe," I said. "But I have to try." Valentina finally turned to look at me. Her eyes glittered strangely in the darkness. "I could stop you. Break the circle, scatter the salt. You could, but you will not." "Why not?" "Because somewhere inside you, my sister is still there. And she does not want to watch me become a monster." Valentina stared at me for a long moment, then something flickered across her face. Pain, conflict, the first real emotion I had seen from her in days. She left without another word. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard her bedroom door close. I was alone. 11:58. I lit the first candle. 11:59. I lit the remaining 6, moving clockwise around the circle. Midnight. I closed my eyes and began to speak. "I am Sofia Herrera Luna, daughter of Miguel and Carmen Herrera, sister of Valentina. I am myself and no one else. I reject the name that was given to me without consent. I reject the bond that was forged when I was too young to understand. I reject you, creature of the void, and I reclaim what you have stolen." For a long moment, nothing happened. The candles burned steadily. The salt circle remained unbroken. The cabinet in the corner stayed closed. I repeated the words, louder, putting all my anger into them. Still nothing. 12:15, 12:30, 12:45. I began to wonder if I had done something wrong, if the ritual was not working, if Doña Esperanza had given me false hope. Then the temperature dropped. It happened all at once, like walking into a freezer. My breath turned to mist. Frost began to form on the windows. The candle flames guttered and flickered. The cabinet door opened. I watched it swing wide, slowly, deliberately, watched the darkness inside begin to move, watched the hand emerge, those impossibly long fingers gripping the edge of the door. The entity unfolded itself from the cabinet. It was larger than before, more solid, more real. The years of feeding had done their work. It no longer looked like a shadow or a silhouette. It looked like something that had always existed, something that belonged in this world as much as the walls or the floor or the air I was breathing. It wore what might once have been a suit black fabric, green with age, a red bow tie around its throat. The bow tie was the only spot of color on its entire form, red as fresh blood against the gray and black. But it was the face that stopped my heart. It had no face, only a mask. White porcelain, cracked in places, stained with something dark around the mouth. The features were painted on, exaggerated like a carnival grotesque. Eyebrows arched too high, cheeks rouged in circles, a mouth curved into a smile that stretched from ear to ear. The smile did not move, but from the corners of that painted mouth something black was dripping. Slow drops falling to the floor with soft, wet sounds. It stood outside the circle of salt, looking down at me with eyes that were not eyes, just hollows. Black pits that seemed to go down forever. And then it spoke, not with the mouth of the mask. The voice came from everywhere at once, from the walls and floor and ceiling, from inside my own head. You called me Sophia. You spoke the words of rejection. You want me to leave. I want you to give back what you took, I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. I want my name, my identity, my life. The entity tilted its head. A puppet gesture, a doll movement. I took nothing that was not given. You spoke the name. You claimed it as your own. Every time you introduced yourself, every time you answered to it, every time you dreamed of being Sophie instead of Sophia, you gave me a piece of yourself. 25 years of willing sacrifice. I was 4 years old. I did not understand. Does a child understand breathing? Does it understand the first word it speaks? You did what all humans do. You created yourself through naming. I was there to receive what you created. It took a step toward the circle. The floorboards groaned. But I am not cruel. I have waited a long time for this. I can wait longer if that is what you need. Come willingly and I will make it painless. You will fall asleep in this world and wake in mine. No fear, no suffering. And if I refuse another step, it was at the edge of the salt now. Then I take you anyway, slower, harder, but the result is the same. In a year or a decade, no one will remember that Sofia Herrera Luna existed. There will only be me wearing your face, living your life. I held up the photograph, the one from 1999. I have this, I said. Proof of the bond. If I burn it, the connection breaks. The entity looked at the photograph. For the first time, something flickered behind those hollow eyes. That is a picture of a child who no longer exists. Burning it accomplishes nothing. Then you will not mind if I do it. I pulled out the lighter, flicked it on, held the flame near the corner of the photograph. Wait. The entity raised one hand. The gesture was almost human. You do not understand what you are doing, it said. You think you are fighting for freedom, but you are wrong. It leaned closer to the circle. The smile on the mask seemed to widen. I have been with you your entire life. I have watched you grow, watched you struggle, watched you fail and try again. I have seen every moment of loneliness, every night you cried yourself to sleep, every relationship that ended in disappointment. I know you, Sophia, better than anyone, better than you know yourself. The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I know you are afraid, not of me, of yourself, of your own emptiness. You work late nights because you cannot stand silence. You ended your relationship because you were afraid of being truly known. You have spent your life running from the void inside you. It placed one hand on the salt circle. The grains began to scatter. I can fill that void. I can give you what you have always wanted. Connection, purpose, an end to the loneliness that has followed you since childhood. The salt continued to part. The circle was breaking. All you have to do is accept. Stop fighting. Let me in. I looked at the entity, at the mask, at the hand destroying my protection, and for a moment I wanted to say yes. I was so tired. Tired of struggling. Tired of being afraid. Tired of a life that never seemed to get easier. What would it be like to just let go, to surrender, to stop being Sofia Herrera Luna with all her debts and failures and become something else? The entity saw my hesitation. Yes, it whispered, that is it. Let go. I am here. I have always been here. The salt circle broke. The entity stepped through. It stood over me close enough that I could see my reflection in the dark hollows of its eyes, close enough that I could feel the cold radiating from its body seeping into my bones. It reached down and touched my cheek, the same cheek where it had burned its symbol days ago. The pain was immediate, fire and ice burning and freezing. I felt myself beginning to slip away, not dying, being erased, my memories pulling loose, my sense of self dissolving, and the entity was pulling it into itself, absorbing me, becoming me. I saw visions, a world without light, shapes moving in the void. Dolores Ramirez Vega, the woman from 1975, her face as she realized what she had agreed to, her terror as the thing she had named took her apart. I saw myself at 4 years old staring into a television that showed something that should not exist. I heard my own voice saying the name for the first time, and I saw what would happen if I surrendered. Myself walking through the world with empty eyes, forgetting everyone I loved, becoming a shell. No. The word came from somewhere deep, somewhere the entity had not reached. No, I grabbed its wrist. The cold burned my hands. I did not let go. You do not get to have me. My voice was broken but loud. I am not lonely enough to need you. I am not empty enough to want you. I am myself, and you cannot take what I will not give. The entity tried to pull away. I held on. I am Sofia Herrera Luna, named after my grandmother who survived the revolution, daughter of parents who sacrificed everything for my future, sister of a girl I'm going to save if it is the last thing I do. The mask was cracking. The cold was fading. I am not Sophie. That name was yours, and I am giving it back. I reject it. I reject every weakness that made me think I needed you. I grabbed the photograph with my free hand. The lighter was still burning. And I want you to burn. I touched the flame to the paper. The image caught instantly. The 4-year-old girl blackened and curled. The shadow in the corner writhed as fire consumed it. The entity screamed, not a human sound, a sound like reality tearing, a sound from everywhere at once. The mask cracked. Pieces fell, revealing nothing underneath, no face, no skull, just void. The body collapsed. The suit, the bow tie, all of it crumbling to ash. But as it fell, it spoke one last time. You think you have won, but I have been part of you for 25 years. You cannot burn me from your memories. I am in your blood, in your bones, in every cell built while you carried my name. The mask hit the floor and shattered. I will always be with you, and someday when you are tired again, I will be waiting. The last of the entity dissolved. The kitchen fell silent. I sat in the ruined circle, hands burned, face throbbing, body shaking. I had won. But its last words echoed in my mind. I am in your blood, in your bones. Had I really freed myself or just driven it underground, I did not know. I did not want to know. But first there was something I had to do. I stood on shaking legs, walked upstairs, knocked on Valentina's door. No answer. I opened it. My sister was sitting on her bed, staring at the wall. She did not acknowledge me. It is gone, I said. I beat it. Valentina did not respond, did not move. I stepped closer, reached for her shoulder. She turned to look at me. For 1 second her eyes were black, empty, depthless. Then she blinked and they were brown again. "You won," she said flatly. "Congratulations." "Valentina, are you okay?" She smiled. A smile I had never seen on her face before. "I am fine. I have never been better. In fact, I finally understand what I am meant to be. What does that mean? I am meant to wait, to watch, to be ready for when she comes back. She is not coming back. I destroyed her." "No." Valentina shook her head. "You destroyed one form. But she is eternal. You cannot kill an absence. You can only move it somewhere else." She stood and walked past me. "Do not worry, big sister. I promised her I would not let her hurt you again. You have earned your freedom." She paused at the door. "But freedom is lonely. You will see. And when you get tired of being alone, we will be waiting." She disappeared down the stairs. I stood in her empty room looking at the wall she had been staring at. Words were scratched into the paint. "Ella me eligio amai." She chose me. That was 3 months ago. I left the house on Calle Magnolia the next morning, packed one suitcase, left everything else behind. Found an apartment across the city, a small studio on the 4th floor of a building with thin walls and noisy neighbors. I told myself the noise was good. The noise meant I was not alone. I went back to work, sat at my desk, answered emails, pretended everything was normal. The first week was hard. I jumped at shadows, flinched at sounds, expected to see a tall figure in a black suit standing in every corner, but nothing came. The apartment stayed ordinary. The nights passed without incident. I started to believe I had really won. The marks on my wrist faded. The symbol on my cheek became barely visible. I told myself they were just scars, just reminders. I did not contact Valentina, did not answer her calls, told myself I needed distance. The dreams started in the 2nd month, not nightmares. Just dreams where I was back in that kitchen, sitting at the table, watching the cabinet. The door was always closed. Nothing ever happened. But I would wake exhausted, drained. Then there were the mirrors. It started small. A flicker of movement when I walked past, a sense that my reflection lagged behind. I told myself I was imagining it. Then one morning I stood brushing my teeth and my reflection smiled at me. I was not smiling, but the face in the mirror was. A wide smile, a familiar smile. A smile that stretched too far. I dropped my toothbrush, blinked. My reflection was normal again. But I had seen it. The scars on my wrist began to change. The faded letters grew darker. New marks appeared. No estás sola. You are not alone. I scrubbed until my skin bled. They did not fade. I started wearing long sleeves, even in the heat. The phone call came on a Tuesday. Valentina's voice was different, deeper, older. "Sophia, I need you to come home. That is not my home anymore. It will always be your home. She will always be waiting. What has she done to you, done to me?" My sister laughed. "She has given me everything. Purpose, a reason to exist. You are possessed. I am chosen. There is a difference. Dolores was chosen. You were chosen. Now I am chosen. We are a family. I am going to find a way to save you. It is too late. But I do not want to fight you. I want you to understand. And what do you understand? Peace. For the first time I feel peace. No anxiety. No fear, no loneliness. She fills all the empty spaces. She is going to consume you." No, that was different. You rejected her. I welcomed her. When you invite something in the process is gentler, more like merging. There was a pause. When Valentina spoke again, her voice had layers, multiple tones speaking in unison. "Come home, Sophia. We miss you." I ended the call. My hands were shaking. The marks on my wrist were glowing. I looked around the office, my coworkers living their normal lives. None of them could help me. I was alone. And somewhere across the city, something wearing my sister's face was waiting. That was 6 weeks ago. I am recording this because I do not know how much time I have left. The marks cover my forearm now. Words and symbols I do not recognize, a language older than speech. I wake at 4:30 every morning. I know I'm dreaming of the kitchen, of the cabinet, of the thing inside. Sometimes I hear whispers in my apartment. Voices from inside the walls, they call both my names. Tell me to come home, tell me I will never be free. I do not know if the ritual failed. If I carried something out with me, something buried so deep, no rejection could burn it away. All I know is that I am not alone. I have never been alone. If you are listening at 4 in the morning, sitting in a dark kitchen with only your phone screen for light, maybe you are not alone either. Maybe something found you when you were young, taught you a name you do not remember learning, has been feeding on your identity for years. If you have a nickname no one remembers giving you, ask yourself where it came from. Ask yourself who spoke it first. Ask yourself what might be listening every time you use it. And if you hear something in the dark, something like footsteps or breathing or a spoon stirring in an empty cup, do not go looking. Run. Because I looked, I fought. I thought I won. Now I understand the truth. You cannot kill an emptiness. You cannot destroy what was never alive. You can only run, hide, hope it finds someone else. I ran. I am still running. But the marks on my skin tell me running is not enough. The whispers in my walls tell me hiding is not enough. And the smile I see in my mirror every morning, the smile that is not my smile, tells me someday soon I am going to stop running. Someday soon I am going home. And when I do, Valentina will be waiting. The entity will be waiting. The cabinet door will be open. I am Sofia Herrera Luna. I am 27 years old, and I am running out of time. If you have a story like mine, leave a comment. Tell me I am not the only one. Tell me there is hope. Because right now at 4:30 in the morning, alone in an apartment where the walls whisper my name, hope is hard to find. The marks are glowing again. The mirror is showing a face that is not quite mine. And somewhere in the distance I can hear it. Metal against glass. A spoon stirring in an empty cup, getting closer. Update: Valentina Herrera Luna was reported missing on February 15, 2025. The house on Calle Magnolia has been sealed pending investigation. Neighbors report sounds from inside at night. Laughter, singing, someone calling a name. Sophie, Sophie, Sophie.